On the surface, Alice's plunge down the rabbit hole looks like a child's fantasy, but it is actually a survival manual for life inside systems that refuse to make sense. In Wonderland, pointless contests end with the line "everybody has won and all must have prizes." Questions about identity are answered only with "who are you?" and real answers never arrive. Yet these absurdities feel disturbingly normal. If Wonderland was a warning, have we already failed its test? The first thing Alice encounters in Wonderland is not a monster or a riddle. It is a race that has no meaning. The dodo gathers a crowd of wet animals and declares a solution: a caucus race. There is no starting line, no finish, and no rules. Everyone runs in circles, darting off whenever they please. The scene descends into confusion, and yet the dodo insists on order. When it is finally over, the verdict is clear. Everybody has won, and all must have prizes. John Tenniel's illustration captures the chaos, creatures dashing nowhere, Alice in the thick of it, uncertain if she is even playing the same game. Carroll, a mathematician at Oxford, knew the power of rules and the madness of rules that do not matter. The caucus race is not just a joke, it is a test. What happens when a system rewards participation alone? When process replaces purpose? Victorian England was obsessed with measurement and merit, but Carroll saw the dark side of endless bureaucracy. The revised code of 1862 paid schools by exam results, not understanding. Inspectors ticked boxes, students recited facts, and everyone left with a certificate, regardless of what they learned. The dodo's logic is the logic of the modern queue, the digital pop-up, the meeting that could have been an email. The real discomfort is not in the nonsense, but in how quickly it feels normal. Wonderland's first lesson is this: the longer you run in circles, the more you start to believe the race is real. The caterpillar sits atop a mushroom, exhaling slow coils of smoke, and fixes Alice with a question that cuts through the nonsense. "Who are you?" The words linger in the air, less an inquiry than a demand. Alice, still reeling from the chaos of the race, tries to answer, but finds her own identity slipping out of reach. She admits, "I hardly know, sir, just at present." In Wonderland, identity is not a fact. It is a moving target, always subject to inspection, but never defined. The caterpillar's question is not about understanding, but about control. Each time Alice offers an explanation, the caterpillar interrupts, correcting her, pressing for something more precise, then dismissing her confusion as if it is her fault for not fitting the mold. The exchange is circular, never resolving, leaving Alice more uncertain each time she tries to comply. Modern systems have adopted the caterpillar's method. Online, a person's identity is filtered through layers of algorithms, first classified, then scored, then flagged if a threshold is crossed. If challenged, the appeal process is as opaque as Wonderland's logic. Users are told to explain themselves to systems that refuse to explain their own rules. The classifier, threshold, appeal, pipeline promises fairness, but delivers little clarity. Each step substitutes a new label for a real answer, and the individual is left questioning not just the system, but themselves. Scholar Robert Douglas Fairhurst notes, Carroll's puzzles imply the opposite of what they say, the Wonderland effect, where absurdity reveals meaning. The caterpillar's interrogation is not about finding out who Alice is. It is about making her doubt she ever knew. This is the quiet machinery of obfuscation, where the demand for definition is a trap, and the search for answers only deepens the uncertainty. Alice stands in a hallway, staring up at a tiny door, then down at her own hands. She has just grown too tall to fit through, or shrunk so small she can barely reach the key. One bite of cake, one sip from a bottle, and her body warps, stretching or collapsing at random. The world offers no instructions. Each change brings a new problem, too big to enter, too small to reach, never quite right. She wonders aloud, I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person then. The more Alice tries to adjust, the less certain she becomes. Her memories blur. She forgets the lessons she once knew by heart. Even her own name feels slippery. The eat me and drink me labels promise control, but deliver only confusion. Each attempt to fit her surroundings rewrites who she is, until she can no longer trust her own reflection. Psychologists call this identity diffusion, a feedback loop where repeated contradictions and shifting standards erode self-confidence. A 2020 review in American Psychologist found that 40% of young people exposed to constant social contradiction report chronic uncertainty about who they are. Alice's struggle is not just fantasy. Modern life delivers its own version. Social media metrics that swing from praise to silence, algorithms that reward then punish, and a barrage of opinions that leave the individual feeling always too much or not enough. In Wonderland, the pressure to adapt never lets up. The cost is quiet but profound, the slow unraveling of certainty, the sense that identity is something borrowed, never truly owned. The Queen of Hearts presides over her courtroom with a single rule: terror. Witnesses barely speak before she thunders, "Off with their heads!" A sentence repeated so often, it drowns out any hope of logic. The trial is pure spectacle. Evidence is irrelevant. The Knave of Hearts stands accused, but no one cares what he did or didn't do. The verdict is already decided. The process is just for show. Fear keeps the court in line. Even the king, who tries to inject a scrap of reason, is swept aside by the Queen's rage and the crowd's nervous agreement. Carroll's parody of justice is more than a joke. It is a study in how repetition shapes belief. Psychologists call this the illusory truth effect. Repeat a claim often enough, and it starts to feel true, no matter how absurd. In Wonderland, authority is noise, loud, emotional, and impossible to argue with. The real power comes not from facts, but from the echo. The Queen's words become reality simply because no one dares to question them. The Mad Hatter interrupts tea with a question that has no answer. Why is a raven like a writing desk? Alice waits for logic, but the riddle circles back on itself, never resolving. Around the table, words lose their meaning. The March hare babbles, the dormouse dozes, and the Hatter insists on rules that change with each cup. Conversation loops endlessly, as if sense itself is out of reach. In Wonderland, language is a trap, unstable, slippery, and shaped by whoever shouts loudest. Modern workplaces echo this confusion. Buzzwords like pivot, synergy, and thought leader fill meeting rooms, but rarely clarify anything. In 2019, 7 out of 10 executives admitted that jargon hides more than it explains. The Mad Hatter's riddle survives in every corporate memo that means nothing at all. Meanwhile, time breaks down. It's always tea time, the Hatter complains, stuck in an endless loop. Today, the average office worker loses up to 40% of their week to meetings, most of which resolve nothing. Days blur into each other, urgency replaces progress, and the clock circles back to where it started. Wonderland's tea party never ends, and neither does the engineered busyness of modern life. Alice's struggle to keep her footing in Wonderland is not just about logic or authority. It is about being measured, watched, and sized up until the measurement itself becomes the environment. In today's world, the pressure to perform is quantified, tracked, and compared at every turn. Nearly half of American workers report feeling daily stress, with Gallup surveys tying much of it to unclear targets and endless performance reviews. The number isn't just a statistic. It is a warning. The more visible you are, the more you are measured. The more you are measured, the more you adapt, until the metrics themselves become the rules of the game. Alice learns to accept the absurdity, shrinking or growing as needed, chasing approval that never arrives. In the Stanford prison experiment, it took less than 3 days for volunteers to treat arbitrary punishments as routine, their sense of right and wrong dissolved by the system's demands. What began as nonsense quickly became the new normal. The machinery of measurement doesn't just track behavior, it rewrites it, one adaptation at a time. In Wonderland, as in life, the real trick isn't surviving the nonsense. It is learning how to accept it without noticing you've changed. Today, systems built on shifting rules and blurred identities aren't just fiction, they are our reality. As language distorts and authority grows louder, the line between sense and nonsense thins. The real test now is whether we recognize the absurdity or simply learn to call it normal. What do you see?